All right, welcome to the Forge Coffee Break. This is the episode number 36. I was just mentioning this is the first, December 1st, we're already by the end of the year, and a lot happened this year. Thank you all for joining all of those sessions. 36 sessions is a big mark. And let me get back to you, turn back to you. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like to bring up, this is your chance.
Yes, Augusto, this is Mani speaking, Reconstruct. One of my colleagues, Kevin, will be joining us in just a moment. We have quite a few questions regarding SVF2, with regards to performance and how performance has been measured on a blog post. I think it's going to take just another few seconds for him to join.
Oh, all right. And we do have the expert here. Kevin is working with the internal teams a lot, so he can help. And let's see, I think our other expert is Michael, but he's in the AWS reInvent this week. So you said he's going to join, right?
Yes, he's also Kevin, and he will be joining.
Oh, okay. Be easy. So meanwhile, anyone else, any other topics?
I would like to maybe ask something meanwhile.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
In BIM 360, basically, if you have a couple of models, let's call them links files. So let's talking about structure and then the 2D sheet of the structure. So sometimes you could see the architecture at the sheets, and sometimes you cannot see the architecture on the sheet. So I'm not sure if this is something to do with both parties. Let's say the architecture company and the structure company, both the model, they are cloud share and they are in BIM 360. So that's why they read each other, even they are not the same hub.
So let me see if I get this right. You are saying that you have one model on BIM 360, one URN, and when you open that URN and you go to a 2D sheet, sometimes you cannot see the linked model on that 2D sheet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so does the same model work in Revit?
Yeah, both of them in Revit. But the point is, let's say we are two companies, like there is the architecture and let's say there is structure. And then usually in Revit, you have it, you link it, and then you have them both on the same sheet. But sometimes even you don't have the file, but you collaborate together with the architecture. So you could see both the files or both the model at the same sheet. So I'm not sure what's the mechanism behind it. If there is something that's I'm wondering.
Yeah. So it seems like a very specific one. We may need some help reproducing the problem. So in summary, you have a Revit model that is linked. When it goes to BIM 360, BIM 360 will BIM 360 design collaboration, right? Will maintain the links. So whatever you have locally, when you publish, it goes to the cloud as well. So the same structure and whatever you have local should publish to the cloud. If that's not working, then something, maybe some configuration is not right, or maybe there's something else that we have to fix.
Yeah, but it's because it's weird because from project to project is different. So some project you could see like when you have two Revit files, let's say one of them MEP and one of them structure. Sometimes you see both of them at the sheet. Sometimes you don't see them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it really looks like a linking problem, right? So when you publish from Revit, Revit will create a zip file with all the files you need to create it, right? To establish the connections. Unless you have like a local structure, something different. But when you have work shared models, and I suspect that's the case, when you publish, it goes as a zip. So maybe some of those files are missing because the way you are doing the work sharing. So do you have ways to reproduce the problem?
Yeah, the problem, I'm not sure like how to isolate it because Like now, what are you saying that it should be both model, they are linked together in Revit, and then you publish them. Then you can see, but this is a problem because you are not allowed to see them together. Because for instance, if you're using Forge model derivative API, that means you will extract the data, metadata for both link file.
Yeah, but if you're going to BIM 360, you don't have control over the translation, right? BIM 360 will do that for you. So yeah. The only thing you can do is the publish process. You as the user, right? You can only publish, and BIM 360 will handle the rest. So this is not on the API side that external like you have access. It's how BIM 360 uses the API, and for you or in the user, it's really about how you publish. And maybe some of the files are missing, maybe some of the settings you have to fix, or something is not working. But either way, this is on the BIM 360 side on how it's being published, right?
Okay, I will look at it again.
Yeah. So yeah. What I suggest is, in general, when you have something like this, and that's for everyone, any kind of problem you have, the first thing you have to try to do is to reproduce the problem. So there is there a few steps that you can do to reproduce it? Because then we can say, okay, are those steps correct? Are we missing anything? And if not, then maybe there's something wrong with the product or with the API. But the first thing is to reproduce it. Otherwise, it gets random. For instance, are you using work shared models? How are you creating the work shared space? So those are the first questions I have to answer.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, if you have that, definitely we can definitely escalate to the BIM 360 team, and they can look at it. Cool, thank you. Where is I see other Kevin.
Yes, he just joined. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Hey, Manny and Kevin. Just to start, I want to apologize. I did take your ticket from last week, so I have it in my queue. I just haven't had a chance to respond to everything there. I think one of your main questions was how do I measure in that one blog post the time it takes to load. So I'm just using simply the viewer on document load success callback to do comparison, and it may not be perfect, but it kind of shows, how much faster SVF2 loads into the viewer. So that was the intent of that comparison.
I believe you can use the geometry loaded event. Is that the one you were using?
It might have been geometry load. Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, because when you load a model, the first thing it triggers is the document loaded, right? But that's just to get started. And then once the geometry is finished, you load the geometry loaded event.
It's probably geometry loaded then that I used.
Cool. I'll let Kevin clarify part of that question that we had is actually relevant to differentiating between streaming the data versus rendering. Kevin, if you can hear us, you can unmute yourself and Nadra.
Yeah, he's still on mute.
He's also connected via phone. So, when we were looking into this, we thought maybe there's an assumption here. The assumption is that the geometry has not been streamed before the geometry has not been streamed, the user will not be able to see the geometry in the viewer. And hence the reason that you've been looking to measuring it. We just wanted to clarify that. Kevin, can you hear us? Nedra? Oh, his audio is still off. There's a second piece to the question. Let me get into the second piece. Why does the time to complete the stage 1 in loading SVF2 takes a long time? Is it the streaming WebSocket connection that is causing that issue? For example, we have a model that's taking us about 20 minutes to complete the stage 1. When you're measuring this time, does it really mean that the model will take 20 minutes to fully load and render? Is that what it means?
So I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean by stage 1. So I just quickly read through the question again. So can you clarify what you mean by stage 1?
I'll let Kevin clarify that. My understanding was that when we're looking to loading viewable, we were getting two different times being measured. One was a stage 1 and the other one was a stage 2. One of them perhaps to loading of the geometry, and one of them, the optimization that was being done on the geometry itself before getting rendered. But let me see if Kevin.
Oh,
can-
yeah, because I think you're talking about translation, aren't you?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. If it's part of translation, then definitely there are two phases, if you will, to the translation. So currently, the way it works is the translator will translate to SVF1 in all cases. And then if you requested SVF2, there's a post process that takes that SVF1, the geometry especially, and it optimizes that for display in terms of basically allowing the system to reference geometry instead of duplicating geometry. So that second level, if you're calling that stage 2, that does take a fair amount of time, and it can take, on larger models, 20 minutes is not unusual.
Got it. Now, in the blog post, there was a metric you've introduced, loading viewable on the SVF2 models. Can you clarify how that time was being measured?
Yeah, so that was using the load geometry event in the viewer.
Correct.
Yeah. So basically just timing between the start of referencing, the document. So start the timer, and then just create, just time until you get that event of geometry loaded. And that's why I say, it's not 100% perfect, but it did, kind of help to show SVF1 versus SVF2 performance, because the loading into the viewer is also, quicker with SVF2 because of that geometry referencing as opposed to, creating the geometry.
Those are the two blog posts, right, Kevin, that we are talking about?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. I did create 2 new blog posts, and I believe these came about the same time your question came in. So you might want to take a look at this, but I don't think there's any new information here in terms of performance. It's really just kind of clarifying some of the newest parameters for the viewer, and also the metadata issues.
The one you're talking about on the performance is older than that?
Yeah, the performance one was the very first SVF2 blog post. So it was back when we were in beta.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat box for everyone. The old blog post that we were referring.
Oh, thank you. That's
the one you were talking about. Is anybody able to hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Wow. Sorry, my device stuff was completely messed up.
No problem. We can hear you now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was in and out for a little bit what you guys are discussing, so I don't know what questions Monty have already asked.
So Kevin, I just want to just reiterate one of the questions I was asking about the stage 1 and the stage 2, and Kevin and Augusto are clarifying that those stages are relevant to model derivative API. They're not relevant to the viewer. And I wasn't sure if you were looking into it from a viewer perspective or derivative API. So maybe you want to clarify that one.
Yeah. So one of the specific questions I had was I was trying to figure out how long it took to have all of the geometry be in the scene. So I was looking through some of the source code to see the different events that would be triggered. And I noticed that in the blog post that's called SVF2 public beta, a new optimized viewer format, there's a little snippet at the top of the page that has that little printout. And I noticed that to get that printout, there's a function called like print stats that runs after mode 1 is considered done inside of like the code. So my assumption is that once mode 1 is done inside of the Forge code inside the client side, not the derivative, you know how optimized SVF2 is compared to SVF. So I was curious, during that mode 1 of loading, is that streaming the geometry over the WebSockets to like eventually then render inside the viewer?
Yeah, so the viewer does use WebSockets for SVF2, and that's part of the performance increase as well. that helps the streaming effect so that you can see, parts of large models before the entire model has been loaded. But for these numbers, that those little snippets at the top of this blog post are just simply copied out of the console. So that gives
I
you
think, I think he's talking that if this is affected or not by the WebSocket, right?
So when you want to get the complete picture of that stat, the final printout of that stat is only printed in the console once the WebSocket streaming is completed. So you can access that while it's streaming, and that number changes over time because obviously the geometry is loading. But I guess the specific question I have related to this is that if you're using SVF2 and it's streamed over WebSocket, while it's streaming over WebSocket, it's loading, is it loading the geometry? So say if I loaded for 2 seconds and I somehow paused the loading theoretically, would I be able to see, and maybe it loaded 2% of the whole geometry, would you actually be able to see the other 98% inside of the viewer? Or the user wouldn't be able to see that geometry of the building until it's streamed all of the rest over WebSocket?
The viewer is incremental. So if you load just the first half of the geometry, that will show, and then the rest the model will be incomplete, right?
Okay. Yeah, because one of the performances that I wanted to track was how long it took to stream the entire model. So like when is the quickest time for the user to be able to see every piece of geometry? Meaning like when can you actually render all of the geometry? And I noticed that the time that it takes is variable, and that WebSocket connection, like when I profiled it to see how long it took to get all of the geometry, sometimes it took like 8 minutes, sometimes it took 30 minutes, sometimes it took even longer.
Okay.
So I was curious because if we want to use SVF2 and it takes a long time to stream the entire geometry, theoretically the user wouldn't be able to see parts of the BIM while they're using the system because it just hasn't been streamed to the client yet. But in SVF, that loading process is a lot quicker, where they have access to all of the geometry sooner to be rendered.
It's a bit strange because I would expect SVF2 to be faster, not SVF1. To the time to first pixel and the time to fully load on SVF2 is faster, right?
Yeah,
because there is less geometry. And just one more thing, this is usually related to the connection, not to the viewer performance, right? So if you wanna, we did some comparison when you load the model locally instead of from the cloud, right? It's very, very fast, right? Because there is no connection between them. And the idea of using WebSocket is to avoid having to do all the HTTP handshake every time, right? So you just establish a connection and keep streaming data way faster than doing several HTTP connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why I was curious on if how can I figure out what exact timing events I can look at, because I was just trying to figure it out just from looking at code and just seeing how this blog post did it and seeing how the events worked in the source code, because I would assume that it would be quicker, but based on just using the bare bones events at face value, it took a long time. So that's why I was concerned
it's a bit strange that it's taking 30 minutes, right? Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, so I'm assuming, so the translation job is already finished, right? You've definitely
Correct.
verified that. So, and which formats are you working with typically?
I have like the file formats.
Yeah. Is it Revit or IFC or Navisworks? Because the source software also has some optimizations in it. So we found like Navisworks, for example, doesn't always perform as well as the Revit file. And that's because its extractor also does its own optimization even when producing SVF1. So
Mhm.
formats can vary as well. So that's why I'm curious which formats you typically are using.
So I picked like about like 8 different BIM files of various sizes, and the 2 file formats that I used were NWD and Revit for my testing.
Okay. Yeah, so in my limited testing, I did not see as much performance improvement with the Navisworks files. You said Navisworks, right? NWD.
Correct.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we mostly use RVT. Only 2 of them were NWD, but this kind of surprise result was always the same.
It's just because Navis is already highly optimized, right? So you don't see more improvements because it's already there.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But for Revit, in most of the cases I had, the only place where I saw that it was kind of similar was with smaller files, you know, so it didn't have as much to optimize. But larger files, in most cases, you know, I saw pretty decent, even the feel of it, right? So you load up the SVF1, it took a long time, and you could see SVF2 came much faster. So what we could do is we could take this offline. I'll go ahead and follow up with your ticket, and if there's some specific models where you could show this, we could take a look at it on our side and see if we can help figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that sounds good. From like the performance aspects of like the GPU side and the meshing and the deduplication, I tracked that and got good metrics around that, so I'm not concerned about that. But yeah, we can chat about the loading times of it being streamed over WebSocket. That was my my main concern.
Okay.
I'll do a quick follow-up, something that perhaps is of interest to everyone here on the call. So are you recommending, for example, for us to request Revit files and convert them to SVF2 versus Navisworks files that are already optimized and then passing them through the Model Review API? If you think about this from an end-to-end perspective, which one of the workflows would end up resulting in something that loads and renders faster?
Well, I think you still want to use SVF2 even with Navis. And if you're working with BIM 360 specifically, the jobs for those AEC formats are auto-translated to SVF2 anyway. So you don't really have control over that.
So
it's only
Kevin, sorry.
I was going to say it's only when you use the model derivative job endpoint that you can really specify which one you want. With BIM 360, you could trigger an SVF job from BIM 360, but they've disabled the capability of forcing SVF2, and that's because of some of the other tool sets that run in the BIM 360 environment. They expect certain formats based on the source format. So not all files are automatically translated to SVF2, for example. So for model coordination, for example, it needs SVF2, and those formats that are supported in model coordination are always translated, and they don't allow you to put it back to SVF1 because that'll break their tools.
I think back from Manny's question is that if you are using SVF2, it doesn't really matter RVT or NWD. It's just that if you're using SVF1, then Navis is already optimized, right? So if you're using SVF2, it doesn't really matter. If you can run through Navis, it will do a little optimization and then a little bit more, right? So it's always better with Navis, but with SVF2, going through Navis is not giving you that much advantage, right, compared to the work you have to do. And depending on the customer workflow, you cannot do it, right? So if SVF2 is always the best option.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Manny. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah,
good question, good discussion.
Of course.
Let's just give 2 Kevins, Kevin 1 and Kevin 2. Let me just open space for someone else. Any other questions or topics to bring up? So Ravi, you're asking on the chat window, is there any existing or in the works blog post on aggregated view class? We did some blog post about that already, didn't we? Aggregate.
the
I'm trying to
multi-model
get here.
viewer idea?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought there was one there.
Yeah, let me share here. Unless you're talking something very new. So I'm just looking for aggregated. That is this one. Yeah, this is that what you were talking about? And I suspect it's using what you talked about.
Yeah, that was the thing. These ones are not using that class.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, we definitely put that on our list then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that when you use the class, it's going to do some tree or the model tree and the properties to work on multi-model.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are doing this ongoing effort to improve support for multiple models. Yeah, it's getting better and better. And I think this blog post is version 7.7. Now we are on 7.50 something. So it's still changing. Thank you. Good point. Add that to our list. And Abed, you are asking, is there any way to download Revit files without its link? So when you upload modules to BIM 360, Revit zip, it creates a zip file. And Michael wrote a blog post. Sometimes I don't know why this doesn't work, and I have to go to Google. It doesn't work on DuckDuckGo. Not even here. Let me get here out of desk. Is there a way to load the zip file inside? Do you have to extract one of the individual zip files inside the module? We try to find here. Where is it? Here, zip extract here. So Michael wrote this article that if you have a zip file in BIM 360, first you download the header of that zip file that indicates the bytes where each file start and end, and then you just download that range from the zip, so you can access one individual file inside the zip.
Could you please send this to us so I can?
Sure.
And we talked long time ago about that in Autodesk they were working on exporting a PDF from 2D sheet without the design automation. So if it's still under process, or this project shut it down, or if there is any existing way.
Yeah. So the way to do it today is to use the mod derivative to convert the sheet to DWG, and then design automation to convert the DWG into PDF.
So there is design automation in
yes, but when you use that, there is a built-in task to plot to PDF, right? So you don't have to write design automation engine code or .NET code for that. You just use the defined activity to convert DWG into PDF. But we don't have out of the box, right? If that's the one you are talking, we don't have a way to get DWG to PDF. Sheet to PDF directly.
So the first is 2D sheet from Revit, and then the second we use the model derivative to convert it to DWG, and then we use, I don't know, as I understood, like app bundle, but it's ready activity, so you can use it to.
Mm-hmm. So first you go to the mod derivative and use API reference. Developer guide. Sorry. And then you go to the supported translations.
Yeah.
And if you go to RVT right here, you see that you can do DWG from RVT. It means that you can get a 2D sheet and go to DWG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
and then
the step after?
Yes. Then the step after that is to use design automation. And there is a built-in task to do that. And And if you just go to activities and get activities without defining a new activity, you should be able to see this one here is a built-in activity. So just say plot to PDF. So you don't have to write AutoCAD specific code because the activity is already defined.
Okay, super. I will look at it because I believe every company around the world, they spend many hours about exporting their sheet to PDF.
Yeah.
This is our headache actually at the office.
Yeah, that's a two-step process here.
Let's hope one day in the future it will arrive in model derivative. It will support NWD, NWC, and PDF. It will support all of them with one single API. One day.
Yeah. Yes. We're just on time, but let me check here, Moses. Can Design Automation API access Revit interference check methods and functions? I don't think so. That interference check, this is not part of Revit. As I understand, this is a extension in Revit to do model check. I think we're talking about the model check plugin for Revit to do that. And yeah, that's an external code. And yeah, I don't think that's available. The closest thing is to run your code and extract that data yourself, but then you have to write your own model check. So the model check from Revit is not available on the API. Yeah, as far as I recall, that's not on the API. And let me stop here. Okay, last chance for last questions. Yeah, thanks, Moses. Okay, so we are approaching the end of the year, but we still have one more coffee break in 2 weeks, December 15. And then after that, we are taking a break and coming back in January. So I will update on the Zoom invite, so you can have that. But on the next one, probably the next coffee break after December 15 will be on the first working week or second working week of January, around 10 or something like that. Let me get the precise date somewhere. But yeah, after that, on the next one, I'll give you precise dates. Oh, come on here. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you for that. And see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.